Hello, my name's Jon Sermon. I'm a church leader based in the UK, and I've been making a habit, not every day, but quite often, of recording short messages for encouragement during this difficult situation we're all in because of COVID-19. And at times it's felt like things were getting much easier and then they were getting more difficult again, especially with the threats apparently posed by the various new variants of COVID. And here we are, still aware that we're a long way off being through all of this. And against that background, we do need encouragement. Now, I happen to be convinced that there are grounds for encouragement simply by turning back to God. We live in a society that, frankly, for a long time now here in the West, certainly in the UK, we've taken our relationship with God rather too lightly. Or even, many of us completely ignored God our Creator, who is still interested in our lives, and maybe declared ourselves to be atheists or unbelievers or skeptics, or just lived as though God has no relevance to our lives. And even in the church, we too are guilty of this. It's not as if we stand there saying, I'm following God in such and such a way that you should be. It's that we're almost stood on behalf of the whole society saying to God that we know we've been ignoring Him. There was an incident in the Bible where a man called Nehemiah, he'd been taken captive and was serving a foreign king. And the people back home in Jerusalem, very few had survived the enforced exile, and his brother, who had been there, visited him and brought him news. And the news was very bad news, that the walls of the city were broken down and the gates were destroyed by fire. Nehemiah was serving the king where he was. He was in a very senior position, but effectively a slave, but in the role of cupbearer to the king, which essentially meant try the wine so that you die first if it's poisoned. And he was so aware of the trouble of the people who had survived the exile and were back in Jerusalem, that when his brother brought this news, he wept. And Nehemiah prayed to God, and he acknowledged before God, he said, look, we've ignored your ways. And there's a really interesting bit in his prayer in which he says, including myself and my father's household, we're in it too. And so on behalf of the whole nation, as it were, he's including himself, coming to God in what's called repentance, a turning away from what we know to be wrong in our lives. And Nehemiah then prayed that God would give him grace in the eyes of the foreign king he served. And the outcome was that the king gave him permission to lead a party and return to Jerusalem to rebuild the city walls and restore the well-being of the people. Now, whether any of that is likely to ring true to our circumstances and how they will unfold is very difficult to say. But one bit that does ring true to me is that we in the church leaders amongst others, we need to be saying and are saying to God that we're sorry for the way we have been living, rejecting you and behaving as though you don't have a direct relevance in day-to-day life. And actually the promises of God to see us through are what we can rely on with hope for the future. And you may think it's easy for me to say that. There he is, sat there with the dog collar on, with a position of security as a church leader. And that's true, yeah. But it's not that I'm not affected. And during the time since COVID broke, my wife's father has died, my own father has died. Neither of them directly because of COVID, but we've experienced the bereavement in circumstances where we can't do the funerals as we would hope to. and we can't get together in family. I've got a brother and a daughter both living in other European countries who can't visit, and we can't visit them. We're not immune. And the whole business of feeling cut off and knowing uncertainty affect church leaders like me just as much as anyone else. But what I can tell you for encouragement is that if you trust in God, you can know that He will bring us through. God bless you.